There are so many reasons right now to be positive about what is happening in the world. And today, with Father Peter Williams, we're going to talk about one of those incredible gifts that we have before us, which is an upcoming pilgrimage here in Vermont. Good morning, Father Peter.
Good morning, RJ.
Great to see you. So let's go a little deeper on the Vermont pilgrimage. So a number of years ago, you started a pilgrimage here at St. Mary's, and it has been quite impactful. This year will be number 5, is that right?
Yes, I believe so.
So where did that come from?
So sometimes, well, there's a process. As the pastor, I'm always looking for like different things. What do we do now? Because even though I've been in this parish for 18 years, I'm always thinking now, how do we improve things? How do I engage people? What is the Lord calling us to is the most important question. And I just had this idea that we should include a pilgrimage, and a little frustrated with the idea of that a pilgrimage would be get on a bus, go to the Shrine of Divine Mercy. That's fine. Or get on a plane and go to Rome or Lourdes or Fatima, all of which I've done, which are great, which, obviously you can't walk there from here. But that whole thing of like the El Camino,
yes,
was a part of that, where I would see those images and I don't know that I had seen the movie The Way, but that would be a movie that would describe it pretty well, what happens and all that along the way from southern France down into Spain, and probably the most famous Pilgrim's Way, but there are many of them throughout Europe and had been for centuries. We don't really have that in the United States as much, and so it happened to coincide. The first one happened to coincide with the Holy Year, or the year of the Holy Door. The year of mercy with the holy doors, that was it. The year of mercy with the holy doors, that you go through and receive the plenary indulgence. And so I said, oh, this will be great. We started in the islands of Vermont, the big islands in Lake Champlain, and we walked, and it was like 40 miles or more that we took 2 days.
The first year.
The first year. And then we learned that 20 miles a day was too much, it was too far. But we sort of honed things over the years. I picked a spot, and we would, then 40 miles out or 30 miles out, we would walk to it. And I did that for a few years and then said, we're running out of holy sites in Vermont, but what's the larger idea? And then I thought, so let's start in southern Vermont, in Brattleboro, and then walk, across the state widthwise, which is not hard to do, but then lengthwise, and let's walk the state both across it, from the southeast corner to the northwest corner of the state. And so then we started last year in Brattleboro at St. Michael's Church in Brattleboro, which would be, the southeastern corner of Vermont, pretty close to both borders. But we started at the church, and then we started walking, and then this year we're going to just continue on with that path until I think it's about 6-7 years that we will have walked the length of Vermont, and we'll have mapped out a route that other people could follow.
Yeah, but you're staying to the traditional approach of a pilgrimage, right?
Right. So in the sense of where we're walking each day, and then where we leave off one day, we pick up the next day, because we're not the El Camino. It's not developed so that there either is a retreat center or a hostel at each stop, kind of thing. Not even a campground necessary, but some of them, we like last year we used a campground, and found one along the way, which is great. And that idea of camping. So I try to keep it kind of simple. So, and the fewer the rules, the better, kind of thing. So, for those people that it would continue to be a walking pilgrimage, because the main thing is that we would walk this.
Yeah.
But then the other things around it, let's keep it simple so that anybody could afford to do it. So that whether it's in a campground or a religious site, like we had started originally at St. Anne's Shrine and stayed there, and and we spend another night at a campground, and then or the campground, and then this year we're going to be spending the nights at Our Lady of Ephesus, shrine on the grounds there.
A beautiful property.
Yeah, beautiful property with a gorgeous view in Jamaica, Vermont, and so we're looking forward to that. But then also wanted to expand it. So if somebody just said, "Well, I can't camp," I'm not going to get a good night's sleep or all that kind of thing, go find a bed and breakfast or find a hotel or stay at your home or depends on where you are. Go ahead. So I'm not creating rules around it that way to make it onerous for you. I don't want to be difficult. I want to focus on the essential pieces. And the essential piece is that this is a spiritual, like I say, it's a movable retreat. And without having, conferences given and all that we would start the day with Mass and include prayer throughout the day, and then end the next day with Mass.
So, so Nancy and I had a chance to join you last year. That was really our introduction to the parish. Incredibly positive event, and I think particularly right now, it's such an opportunity for anyone who's watching this, anyone who feels drawn towards the Lord, to take this very positive opportunity to dedicate just 2 days.
Right.
You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to travel around the world.
Correct.
But enjoy this pilgrimage and opening our hearts to the Lord.
And the idea was to build a template so that anybody could do it. I think you noted to me, so a pastor in another parish could say, well, we're not going to do it the first week of August. We either do it the last weekend of July or the first weekend of August, depending on year and where the weekends fall and all that. This year, it happens to be the Friday is the 30th of July or 31st of July, and then Sunday is the 2nd of August. But somebody could take the template that we've built and say, well, we can't walk with you, but we're going to pick a weekend in September or October or May or whatever.
And just replicate
it and do it again. And if,
really, no pun intended, but not a lot of heavy lifting.
No.
Volunteers that make sure that we stay hydrated while we're all walking. The walk is really not arduous, but some really
we've had some hills that went last year, that 4.5 mile hill,
straight up.
But other than that, it's not that difficult, right?
Yeah.
We're walking in Vermont, and so you're going to have hills. Just everywhere you go, you're going to have hills, either smaller or they're taller or whatever. But that's the idea, is to try to, it's not an athletic event. So it's not a timed event, kind of thing that you have to get to this place by this time and what you don't. I mean, there's no orienteering involved. I have to follow my compass and all. We put up big orange signs, to say go left, go right.
Really diverse group of people. Yeah.
And because we've done that, that you just have, as you say, this diverse group of people. That's who's in the parish, in your parish. So. We don't tend to get as many young people yet. I think at some point we will, or they might.
Well, Elliot said he's going to join us this year, which is
exactly.
Great.
Get his group together. That'd be great. But they actually, what might happen for the younger people is to say, we want to do 40 miles on a weekend instead of 30 miles or something like that. Great. And I would love the fact that maybe there's a younger priest who went about it a little bit differently and said, we're going to carry everything on our backs in a backpack, and we're going to stay at a campground or somebody's yard or that kind of thing.
Sure.
We're going to do it this way. Come up with many ideas you want. What I tried to design was a pilgrimage that would fit a broader group of people.
One of the steps that you took last year, which has stayed with Nancy and I since then, is that you gave out these little cards. Rules for a pilgrimage, rules for life.
We've done that every year.
And have you?
Yeah, from the very beginning. And that was my inspiration, was watching a documentary on pilgrimages. And there was this little Irish priest, an older guy, and he had been assisting people in their pilgrimage to Croagh Patrick and then climbing Croagh Patrick. Since seeing that, I've actually done that. It was one of my things that I wanted to do, and I did it. That's a great a pilgrimage as well. But anyway, I stole these from him, and so if he's out there, God bless you.
That first one is, it just kind of sets the tone, right? Be quiet and listen to God.
So each day we say there's an hour of silence, and we've sort of chosen from 10 to 11 each day as we're walking. It's almost like an air horn goes off, but it doesn't, kind of thing. It's like, and then because
it's Beth.
Yeah, exactly. But like you're walking with people, you want to talk, you want to continue the conversation, but you have to remember, let the Lord, speak to you.
It's a beautiful part of it, of the day.
Yeah.
And you realize how quickly you could open your heart up and just be quiet.
Right.
Right.
Right. And it's one of those things where people will say, Paul Kendall, from the first one, I'm so grateful for that night before we started, the Friday night before we started, we're around the campfire. And he said, I'm just curious, we'll go around and we'll ask, what do you hope to get from this? And at first I thought, well, it's a little hokey, cheesy, kind of thing. But shortly after somebody spoke, I thought, well, it's the simplest thing, but it's brilliant. And then what we do we do a recap like a week or 2 weeks after the pilgrimage. So this is what I had hoped to get out of it. And they might have gotten all of that and more, or they said, this is what I had hoped to get, but I got something completely different, the surprise,
yes,
that came.
Yes.
And it's a simple thing, but it also, if you're able to share that, and, I think you and Nancy both said, well, we just kind of want to get to know people. We certainly want to deepen our faith and relationship with Jesus, but we kind of want to get to know people. Well, you got that. You
Very
got
much.
all of that, kind of thing.
Yeah. And for anyone who's watching today or at any point, and they're wondering, well, I don't really know people, or I just barely know people. Trust me, Nancy and I literally knew no one.
Right.
We had met you, we'd met Beth and Lori and Paul and Eileen and a few others, but didn't really have any relationships. And it was life-changing.
Yeah.
In a beautiful way.
I think for everybody, and so that like we're able to say, those of us who have done it every year are able to say, oh, here are these new people that are coming in, and it just sort of brings life to it.
It
right?
does.
That you think it's blessed by God. That's often how God brings this blessing, that there are new people involved. And every year, it hasn't grown. We don't have thousands of people coming on. It's just gently grown from, I think we had like a dozen the first year.
24 last year?
It was something like that,
Yeah.
like in the low 20s. So, over the course of 4 years, just adding a few. You mentioned earlier, and it's worthwhile to note that there are other people who can't walk the pilgrimage, or they're walking a few miles of it. They're walking 2 or 3 miles of it a day.
But they're there.
But they're there, and then they're also helping. So they're, making breakfast, lunch, dinner. So they literally meet us at a certain point halfway through the day. They meet us at a spot, as a pre-designated spot, and they put out the cold lunch, the sandwiches, but they put all of that out for us. So when we arrive, there are cold drinks, there's the fixing for a sandwich.
People get a little tired, and after 5 miles or whatever, they want to take a break, they can.
Right.
Because Dennis was driving around picking people up.
Yep.
They were a little bit like those little golf carts that you see on the golf courses with the beverages out the back.
The Ranger,
it was
or the
awesome.
bar cart. You shouldn't know about the bar
No,
cart.
nothing.
But yes, and it was great. And then Dennis figured out that he didn't actually have to get out of the car. He could just hit that little button, and his tailgate would go up.
Yeah, so he was
and
even
we'd go into
happier.
the cooler. Oh, great! Just shut it on your way.
Going back to these rules of the pilgrimage, rules for life. The second one, change your heart. Ask God to tell you one thing to change.
Right. It's just as simple as the brilliance of this. When I heard it the first time, it's like, okay, so what you're trying to do is change your heart. Pick one thing, just one thing. Say, go to the Lord and say, Lord, and He often responds. Just in the midst of either in the quiet time, or you're hearing somebody else's story, or a little thing's interaction, and then it occurs to you, oh yeah, I just need to change my attitude about this thing, or my habits about this thing. I mean, and what we're talking about, that's why I say it's literally like a movable retreat. So the movements that would happen interiorly, like the retreat director would try to get you to think about this and this and to move you interiorly, somehow by just moving your body, moving along with your feet. Because there are a lot of people who can't sit still for that long, to sit through the talks of a retreat. And the beauty of this is an ancient custom that speaks to the deepest part of us as human beings, where we're walking. And we're literally using that movement, that natural kind of thing that we have to do every day. We're using it for a specific purpose to align ourselves to God.
Go back to something we said when we started out. There's something wonderfully positive about this pilgrimage. And, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but I will just a little bit. But there's a lot of negativity. We've spoken about this countless times over the last how many months with this COVID thing and just changes, right? And there's a lot of people have an excuse for saying, well, they want to just focus on what they can't do. I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, here's something that we all can do, right? In fact, I think last year there was a young woman that joined us. She wasn't Catholic yet.
Right. We didn't necessarily know that until we started walking with her.
But she felt called.
She's like, this is cool. I heard this is a cool idea. I want to do this. It just speaks to that, sort of basic, like I can do something. It speaks to that I know these are primal things within us, to worship God and to offer something to God, to get in a relationship with God. And so to use, some people do it with food. They're cooking and they use that food, this particular meal, and we see customs in different nationalities or whatever that this kind of food reminds me of this event or this spiritual thing, or on and on, like a Passover meal kind of thing, whatever. Well, here's that, and she felt that connection. Just say yes. And then, like as you were saying, something positive I can do. And that was number 3, and I'm probably jumping ahead, but no complaining. So you're walking along, and you want to just say, oh, this hill is too big, or I'm too hot, or where are the drinks, or I've got a pebble in my shoe, or there's a blister starting. We do all those kind of things. So what's cute is that we've all learned, those of us who walk the pilgrimage, we say, I'm not complaining. I'm just making an observation. I'm making this observation that it's a very hot day, or something like that. It was just,
But I have to tell you, how many times you can see that card is a bit weathered
worn,
at this point, but how many times I've pulled that out. Nancy and I go for a walk, go for a hike in the wintertime, I go snowshoeing, and I'll pull that out. And it's a gentle reminder, because it is about life. It's not just about a pilgrimage.
Yeah, and so that was on the other side. It says, rules for a pilgrimage, rules for life.
Yeah. So you want to grab number 4 there?
Sure. Build community. Jesus is beside you. Talk to somebody new, and we all know this, right? Very often God appears in the form of people around you, and he'll come to, the saints of old, would encounter Christ that way. And in the Old Testament, angels would come as messengers, but they would be under disguise as just travelers or whatever. And so there's that whole sense. And then there's the real sense that if we're the body of Christ, well, then he's present in his members. And so the beauty of walking the pilgrimage, I imagine there would be a beauty in doing it just all alone, just in the silence, for 2 days. But there's also a beauty in doing it community. And, for every one person who could do it alone in silence for 2 days, there are probably 25 or 50 that get much more out of it by walking it with other people. And so you get something from, and so we make a point, I try to make a point of saying to people, walk with new people. You're not the whole thing, but just every now and again, walk with somebody different.
It's fascinating. I remember last year, I got to know people that it would have taken me 20 years to get to know. Because a lot of times your paths don't cross. If
Right.
you're, different gender, different age, demographic, whatever, your lives just don't, they don't.
I was
always
in a
mesh.
parish like that where the church was in cruciform, and the priest would come out from the sort of the top of the cross. People who lived on this side of town would park along this thing and would come in that way. People who lived on this side of the parish
sure.
would come in, and others who lived on that part of the parish would.
And
Literally,
ne-
it
never
was
cross
it was a
over.
thing, and they would say. So I was there for 5 years, but I was constantly encountering it. I'd say, that person. I'd say, what side of the church do they sit on? And I'd say, when do they ever get together? So that they had been staring at each other
Yeah.
for decades
Yeah.
and wouldn't know a name, but just would kind of know a face.
I'll tell you, at last year's pilgrimage, I thought it was fascinating, just the conversations that Nancy and I got into with different people. In fact, I'd tell you, most of the walk for the 2 days, within the first few miles, we ended up apart. Now, she walked faster than I did.
Yeah.
I had had my hip replaced about a month earlier, so I wasn't moving that fast. But I got to know some really fascinating people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to take the last one there?
Sure. Look forward. Redemption and resurrection are ahead of you. And, at first, I would have to say when I saw this in the documentary, and the priest sort of had his little rules and he was stating the rules, and it's one that's maybe not as easy to pick up. But I think, at least for me, and it probably is a function of my personality or whatever, but also, I was look forward. So I am looking forward, but in this, what am I looking forward to? And always to keep in mind, okay, so the goal is either to get to the top of this hill. The goal might be to get to lunch. The goal might be to get to the end of the day, or whatever. Fine. But then really you start pushing that out a little bit. What's the goal? What's our goal? What's our goal? Is the kids, when I would teach confirmation, I'd always say, does it pass the and then what test? I love that just sort of little thing, and even in my own life, to say, I'm going to do this, and then what? And so the things that I'm doing, how do they feed into the future? How do I look forward? How am I looking forward? So, haunting quotes from Jesus. What would it profit a man if he gained the whole world but lose his soul? Which is the and then what? Is an answer to the and then what question, or how forward am I looking? And then to that other part of it. So I can understand that a little more easily, but then to understand that other part of it, that resurrection, redemption, or perhaps a better way to say it, our salvation and resurrection are ahead of us. Are you keeping that in mind?
There's so much about what Christ taught us, encouraged the disciples to do, that is deeply embedded in a pilgrimage, right? You will give thanks. You will be thankful. You will love one another.
Yeah.
You will have time for reflection. You'll have time for adoration. It literally comes alive.
Right.
I don't think anybody could
And
live this and not be
there's
happy.
also, you would be tested, which is like life. We wanted to make it difficult enough that it would challenge you, but not so difficult that you would just fail. And then I will also tell people that there's no really failing. So if you walked half of it and said that's all I can walk, fine, it's not a failure. You meet us at the end. We'll see what part of it you can walk tomorrow. If it's just a mile tomorrow or nothing tomorrow, fine. You still had the whole experience of being with these people and whatever. But if you are determined to finish this, and last year there was a group of us, we sort of met up at one point, people who had been there earlier and those just coming. We're on a lawn and we're still a mile and a half away from our destination, from Our Lady of Ephesus Shrine, and we're there at the green across from the general store in Townsend, which I'm not endorsing because they won't let you use their bathrooms. But anyway, we're there and we still have this, and it's a challenge because now, your blisters or your hip, your knee, your body is aching, it's still warm and, whatever. And now you've sort of sat down for a little while. If you're older, your joints have maybe stiffened up a little bit. You're like, oh, it's only, a mile left or a mile and a half left. But, when you're just done 14,
and I would,
it's a challenge.
I would bet any amount of money that you could talk to all 24 people that attended last year, and everybody would tell you, no regrets. So happy that they did it.
Yeah.
In so many ways, and I'll go back to Barbie and Dennis for just a moment. They didn't walk it, but my gosh, they were so involved. I mean, so helpful.
Well, Dennis helps us with all the logistics, but I think Barbie does. I think she walked.
Does
She walked like 5 miles of it at the end, or whatever, 3 to 5 miles of it at the end. And there were a number of people. We've had people who are in their 80s who just said, "I'm just going to walk that last 5 miles," and then so they walk the last 5 miles, and I always end with mass, and so they're there for that mass, and I include them, kind of a thing, because yes, whether it's 5 miles, like you're saying, you read these, you go out for a little hike, and I don't imagine that your hikes are more than 5 miles or whatever.
Probably not.
That kind of thing. So they're entering into the whole spirit of it, and I want to include. That's what I always want to include more people, and we're not sort of excluding anybody, and we're trying to draw them in to enter into the whole spirit of it.
I really, I would tell you, I need to thank Beth and Lori for inviting Nancy and I. Remember, it was a holy day of obligation. We were down and we were at St. Joseph, and it was after Mass, and you had announced something about the pilgrimage, and it was just a few weeks away, and it was not on our radar. We had just made the decision to spend the summer in Vermont, and was not at all on our radar. And after Mass, Lori and Beth came up to Nancy and I and said, "You're going on the pilgrimage, right?"
Right.
And it was so powerful to have people invite us.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a deep part of you and I both that feel compelled to invite everyone.
Yeah, I would love to invite as many people as I could. I don't care if you're hearing this from another country or another state. Come, and we will make a place for you.
Yes.
Especially this year, we'll make a place for you. We've sort of gotten this down so we know how it works, the whole mechanics of it, science of it, whatever. We know how it works. We'll take care of you. Whatever your needs are, we'll take care of you.
And you don't need to bring anything. You don't need to just have
literally just the clothes you need to walk. We unfortunately or unfortunately will supply you with a bright orange T-shirt that says Pilgrim on it. And the reason why we supply it is twofold. One is that it keeps you safe on the road, because some of the roads are, it's not just backwoods or whatever, although we try to get as many of those. That's why Vermont is beautiful, and up and down hills and beautiful views and lakes and rivers and streams and all of that it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But also, but those times where we have to get from here to there and that. But also it says Pilgrim on it, and people stop
all the time
and they ask us, "What are you doing?" And they see all the orange T-shirts, and they say, "What are you doing?" And you almost feel like one of those convicts who's by the side of the road picking up trash, kind of like, because you have to wear a certain uniform or whatever. Some people just can't, and that's fine. You don't have to, but I encourage people to, because it says you're a witness, and I think they witness more to their faith in those 2 days to people who are driving by than they do in months. Because here's people say, and so we have a little line, a little speech. I give them a little thing. Oh, you could say this. Very often they start engaging people in conversation.
Yeah.
Along the way, there was a group needed to use a restroom, and they knocked on a door, and they let them. They met other Catholics from St. Michael's in Brattleboro, and a little relationship. Just a couple of months ago, they had a mass said for that couple.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, just grateful. Like, this is how we can say thank you, and they connected again. It was really sweet. But those kinds of things, where you make those connections. So you don't even have to bring the T-shirt. We'll supply. We'll supply you with two bright orange T-shirts.
Over the coming couple of months, we'll come back to this again, because I think it's a gift. It's really a gift. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So Father Peter encourages us all and is inviting us all to participate in this pilgrimage. And gosh, I can't voice that any stronger. It is a beautiful thing. And if you're listening to this, please reach out to Beth in our office, and trust me when I tell you, you'll be very thankful that you participate in this pilgrimage. And let us all remember, trust in God.